Welcome to Jackie's Craft Table. Hello everyone, welcome. I have my Simon Says Stamp December Card Kit here. This one is called Holiday Cheer, and I'm going to be creating 10 cards with it. On my first card, I'm playing with some sparkly embossing powder. It's called holographic embossing powder. I'm going to use it over the snowflakes that came in the stamp set. I'm going to jump right into my card making without showing the products that came in this kit. You've probably all seen what's in it already. I did receive my kit kind of late, so that's why I'm getting this card kit out just about a week before Christmas. But there's still time to make up some cards if you need them. This card kit has sold out, but you can buy these products separately. The stamp set I'm using is called Holiday Cheer, and it has all of these beautiful snowflakes in it. This design turned out kind of unusual. I think it would be better for a Happy New Year's card. But I really like how it turned out, so I included this in my video. You'll have to see what you think of this card. So I stamped these out with VersaFine Onyx Black ink, which is a pigment ink and stays wet longer and holds onto the embossing powder. Now I'm just melting the embossing powder, and the black ink shows through, but this embossing powder just makes it really sparkly and pretty. I have to apologize for my voice. I'm battling a cough. These coughs seem to linger on forever. For the sentiment, I'm using the same VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I'm stamping the Merry Christmas sentiment onto a piece of the white cardstock that came in the kit. And I'm going to cut these down into strips and just place them on my card panel. I'm using some Gina K Connect glue to do this. And again, I think this would be a stunning card for a Happy New Year's card. It just has that glamour to it. And then I can trim off the excess with my scissors. I'm going to decorate my black card base with a Spectrum Noir glitter pen. This is just clear glitter. It's almost out. I need to get a new one. But that just adds a pretty touch to this card. Trying to get some out here on this scrap piece of paper so I can just put it on the very edges of my card base, only what's going to be showing around the lipstick red cardstock. I struggled with this, but I managed to get enough out. And now I can adhere my main panel onto the card base. And I did pop this up with a little bit of foam tape. And that completes my first card. Kind of different for a Christmas card. And then I do add a couple of the teal green sequins that came in the card kit. I just love all of the sparkle of this card. Card number 2 has to be my favorite of these 10. I'm going to try and recreate an old-fashioned postcard. My mom has a book of old postcards that her mom used to collect back in the early 1900s. And I always loved looking through that. I love postcards. I collect some too. So I'm creating a cute postcard, starting with the stamp. I stamped that out with some green ink, and I'm going to fussy cut that out. The cardstock I'm using is kind of off-white. I want it to look antique. And I'm going to stamp the little Santa image on the corner of this. He's such a cute Santa. I really love this stamp. And I do stamp him up a few times just to make sure he's nice and crisp. Now I'm using my T-ruler to draw a line down the middle of this card, like they do on postcards. On one side, you write your address, and on the other, you write your little message. And for the message, I'm using some of the sentiments from the set. And I'm just going to ink them up. I want to try it out here first to make sure I like the position of them. And this just says, "A very Merry Christmas to you and yours." And that looked good, so I'm going to ink them down onto the postcard. On the other side of the postcard, I'm going to stamp the sentiment that says making a list and checking it twice with some red ink and a little heart from the stamp set on the other side. These just add cute touches to the card. I'm going to color in my Santa with some Prismacolor pencils. Just going to go through that really quickly for the sake of time. He's fun to color. For the shadow below him, I'm using a blue Prismacolor pencil. And then I want his list to look a little bit antique as well. So I'm using a yellow Prismacolor for that. I want to distress the sides of this postcard, so I'm using some Vintage Photo Distress Oxide. And I'm just gently going over the edges of my card. I think that adds a really antique, fun look. This is where it really starts looking like a postcard, an old postcard. And then I'm using a little foam square behind my postcard so I can prop that up. And then I'm going to adhere this down onto a green card base. This is leaf green and it came in the card kit. And that finishes off my postcard card. I really love this one. Another of the items that came in this kit that I really love is the little bow die. And I die cut that with some lipstick red cardstock. And that's going to be kind of the star of this show. I'm also using some patterned paper and another piece of the green leaf cardstock. I'm going to stamp my sentiment on the green leaf cardstock with a darker green ink. And this just says sending Christmas cheer. I want it really dark, so I stamp it a few times. And then the red bow of this die cut matches the red bow on this pattern paper. Then I'm just going to glue a few at the top of this card. It kind of transitions between the pattern paper and the green cardstock. I'm just trying to get those on as evenly as I can. And then I thought it needed something more, so I did another little stripe of paper underneath them. And this was a really fast card to put together, and now I'm just adhering it onto a white card base. And that completes card number 3. I also decorated the inside of this one, another leftover bow. I cut out more bows than I needed. I'm going to use some of the cute stickers that came in this card kit for card number 4. These are really heavy-duty stickers. I think if you bent them too much, they would crack. But I really liked the weight of them. I'm adhering these banner letters onto some cardstock. I'm putting the white ones on some lipstick red and the red ones on some white. I just wanted to add a little more heft to them because I'm going to be propping them up with some foam squares. And now I'm fussy cutting these out. I'm also using a piece of the pattern paper. I'm cutting it down into strips. I love this one that has the little houses on it. It's so cute. And now I'm just adding foam squares to my banner. To adhere some string to hold up the banner pieces, I first glue a line across my card panel. Then I'm just pushing the string into it. I found that that was the easiest way to do this. Now I can adhere my little village strip of paper. This is a piece of the Audrey blue cardstock that came in the kit. And now I can adhere down my banners right over the string. I think that looks so bright and fun. This Audrey blue used to be a card base, but I cut it so that I just had the panel for it. And now I can adhere this onto a white card base. And I cut it down so that the white of the card base would show through. And that completes this card. It was just quick, but fun to put together. And here's a peek at the inside. For my next card, I wanted to use some of these cute cutouts that came in the pattern paper. So I'm using my paper trimmer to cut these out. I do end up cutting out some by hand. I'm going to adhere these onto my card panel. It's almost going to be kind of like a patchwork quilt. I'm going to use the same sentiment that says sending Christmas cheer for this card. I'm stamping that onto a piece of this lipstick red cardstock. I really love this lipstick red cardstock. I ordered a pack of it on Black Friday. I've been enjoying using that on my cards. I think it's really bright, fun color. I'm going to use some silver embossing powder over this sentiment. I'm also going to emboss the edges of these little rectangles, just to add a little more something to them. It takes a little bit of time, but I think it turns out pretty. And the little images are so small, when I go to heat emboss them, I have to use my reverse tweezers so I don't burn my fingers. They melt pretty fast when you lay them down flat on your work surface like this. It's pretty mesmerizing watching this embossing powder melt, and it turns so bright when it melts. I had fun doing this part. I had to be careful to hold them down or else this heat tool would blow them away like that. It took me a while to assemble them on the front of my card panel, and I'm using another piece of the green leaf. I just couldn't decide if I wanted it portrait or landscape and how they would fit the best. So I moved them around a lot until I came up with something I liked. And then I'm just going to adhere them down flat onto my card panel with some Gina K Connect glue. I think the vintage look of all of these images are a lot of fun. I wanted to fit as many as I could on there just because I love them. And then there are a few blank spaces, so I added some of the stickers, and I also add a piece of ribbon just around it. I'm not going to tie it into a bow, just a cute little knot. This one kind of reminds me of an ugly Christmas sweater, but an ugly Christmas card. It's so ugly that I think it's cute. Anyway, I had fun putting this one together. I'm using another white card base to adhere that to. And that completes this card. I used some of my extra cutouts on the inside of the card. The stamp set from this card kit came with 3 different stamp images. I love stamps, so I had to use these to make my own pattern paper background. I'm using some different Distress Oxide colors. I'm using pine needles, Festive berries, which came in the card kit, and Salty Ocean. And then I also use Vintage Photo just because I thought it needed a little something more. I think the brown adds a cute touch to it. And then I'm filling in with a few of the snowflakes. I liked this snowflake in particular because it was so square. Then I'm going to stamp out the heart with more of the Festive Berries ink. I'm stamping them out on a piece of scrap paper first, just because they are new stamps and I want them to stamp perfectly on this panel. And then it also had a cute little outline of a heart. I'm just using up all the spare space on this panel. I want it to be completely filled. Next, I'm stamping out the sign that came in this stamp set. This is really fun because you can stamp different sentiments on the inside of these little plaques. Sorry, my head gets in the way there. I just wanted to perfectly align those. I'm stamping them out with more Distress Oxides. I think this was a fun thing to do because it made it look even brighter. I'm going to color in this little image with some polychromos pencils. I'm going to cut it out with some rectangle dies, and this is a Wonky Stitches die. This is new to my craft room. I bought this on Black Friday too. I've been wanting these dies for a long time, and I just think they are so cute. I use them a lot in this video, so I'm going to apologize ahead of time for that. I also cut out my pattern paper with a Wonky Stitch die. Oh, that looks so fun. I'm going to prop up my little sign with some foam tape and center this on my pattern paper. And this time I'm going to use a lipstick red card base. This is just a fun and bright Christmas card. I do end up adding a few of the green sequins. I also add a blue polychromos pencil under my sign just to ground it a little bit, and that completes this card. And I used a sticker for the inside. These stickers are fabulous to use on the insides of your cards. On my next card, I'm going to use the Darling Candy Cane die, and I'm using a piece of the striped pattern paper that came in this kit. And also another piece of the red lipstick cardstock. The red cardstock I'm going to use for the outline of these candy canes. Then I'm going to paper piece this stripy paper inside the candy canes. I'm just carefully popping those out with my craft pick. And I'm going to glue it down flat onto another piece of white cardstock. And of course, I had to use my Wonky Stitches again here. And it's really fun doing this paper piecing. It goes really fast. I thought this striped pattern paper would be perfect for these candy canes. And I just put a little dab of glue down to adhere these. Doesn't take much. The bow I die cut with some green leaf cardstock. And it has this little center piece that you can put on. And then I'm using the rest of my striped pattern paper behind it, as well as a white card base. And that one was pretty fast to put together. And here's a look at the inside. Another sticker and another strip of the pattern paper. For the next card, I had to use this cute little tag included in the kit. It is made up of the lipstick red cardstock. And I'm going to stamp Merry Christmas right onto that with some VersaFine Onyx black ink. And then I'm going to use some more embossing powder over that. I'm using the holographic embossing powder again. Just a nice sparkle to it. It's hard to clean up after this embossing powder. You almost have to throw your paper away because you can't get all the glitter off of it. That's pretty. I pulled out another piece of pattern paper, and this one's really busy, but I liked how happy and cute it looked. I'm using some ribbon from my stash. Just has some red snowflakes on it. And I'm carefully tightening this onto the tag. Didn't want the ribbon to be too busy because of the background paper. And then I'm going to tie a bow with a piece of twine around that. I thought that it needed just a little something more. This pattern paper was kind of difficult to use because I really loved the stripes that were on the other side of it. But I saved all my scraps so I could use some of the stripes if I wanted on another card. And here's a peek of that cute red striped paper. I'm using a craft cardstock for my base. And then I added some foam tape behind the tag to pop it up. And I trimmed my ribbon down a little bit. I'm going to add some of the holly berry stickers on the tag. It was just looking kind of bare up at the top, and this really helped. And that completes this card. And here's a peek at the inside. I did use a piece of the striped paper and another sticker. This kit included a few Daniel Smith watercolor dots. I wanted to try those out. So I'm stamping my Christmas tree image onto a piece of watercolor paper. I have to stamp it up several times just to get it nice and crisp because this paper is so rough. I am embossing it again. This helps a lot when you're watercoloring just to contain the water. And then I can melt that and start in on my painting. I'm going to tape this down to a board with some of my purple tape. And I'm not mixing the colors much, I'm just using them straight from the palette. This green is such a pretty green. These Daniel Smith watercolors were really fun to play with. I'm using the yellow for the star. And then I want to paint a little bit of blue sky behind it. And I don't want the sky to look perfectly smooth. I want it a little rough looking. I'm using some reds and yellows and blues to paint the twinkle lights on the tree. And then blue underneath it for the shadow. Then I decided it needs something more, so I'm going to stamp out some of the snowflake stamps with some embossing ink. This is Versamark ink. And I do stamp those up a couple of times just because the paper is so rough. Very textured paper, but it's nice. And then I'm going to pour white embossing powder over them. Make them look like some pretty snowflakes in the background. And I'm going to stamp up even more after I melt the embossing powder on these three. Yeah, I think that looks so pretty. Uh-oh, here's the wonky stitch die again. I'm cutting this panel down, and I'm going to use some more pattern paper behind it. I love this blue snowdrift pattern paper, and I thought it would look really nice behind it. So I'm going to cut this down, make it a little bit smaller than my white card base. And then I'm using some foam tape behind my Christmas tree and centering that onto my card. Then I forgot to stamp my sentiment before I adhered everything together. So I took out the foam piece of my mini Misty. And then I'm stamping out this teeny tiny sentiment that says Merry Christmas with some more VersaFine Onyx black ink. It's just a little sentiment, but it's so cute. I got some on the door of my mini Misty, and I didn't want that transferring onto my card, so I wiped that off. And I end up stamping that up a few times. And my card is done. I'll show you what the inside looks like. It's very simply decorated with another sticker. I love this little present sticker. It's cute. Thought it'd go perfect with the Christmas tree. I'm going to stamp out the sign again, and I'm going to color it in with some Copic markers. Unfortunately, on this card, I lost some of the footage, so I'm going to show you what I do have. I like how this card turned out, so I wanted to include it. And I am using some more pattern paper. I love this bold plaid piece of paper. And I'm going to stamp my sentiments again inside this little sign. It says, "This way to the North Pole." I'm going to speed through the coloring for the sake of time. I'm just painting this pole red and green this time. I thought it looked really cute. Adding shadows on one side with a darker red. I do the same with the green. And then I end up fussy cutting this out. And I did it ever so meticulously on camera. But unfortunately, I did lose the footage. I add more Copic markers over the wooden placards. And I put a little snowdrift under it and put a shadow with some gray Copic markers and added some green sequins. The inside I added a lot of stickers as well as more of the pattern paper. And I used one of the Audrey blue card bases. I thought this was a really fun card. Here's a look at all of the cards I created with this fun kit. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season. Here are some close-up shots of the cards. Take care, everyone. Bye.